Let me show you a couple of things. I've really focused on the issue of eyes closed versus activation for a good reason. The screen you're seeing is an example of one subject. The blue represents 2 standard deviations below the normal value. This is for reading alpha, beta 1, which is 13 to 32, beta 2, which is 32 to 64. And what you'll see is the eyes closed data does not look like the same data under the reading task condition. The values drop considerably. So that's been my contention, that you really can't use eyes closed data to understand what the brain does when it's engaged in a task. The red numbers here represent the average standard deviation for all connections to F4, for example, which is a very useful figure to figure out where the weakness in the system is. So that's one thing I want to. The second thing I want to show, I'll get rid of that one. This is a research published back in 2013. The 4 groups: normal, TBI, adult, and child-specific learning disability. The auditory memory standard deviation effect, and then I gave it the percent effect, and then the reading memory standard deviation and percent effect. This is what I put in the email for the webinar announcement, but I couldn't format it correctly. So I figured I'll just show it here. So these are quite impressive results using this type of approach. Part of the problem, this goes back to the eyes closed versus task condition. And I ran this last week. If you take a look at the predictors from eyes closed data to memory performance under actual task conditions, this is for a sample size of 80, we get all these variables related in the frontal lobe: coherence delta, beta 2, phase delta, phase alpha. But when you actually look at the correlates during the task, we get a different pattern of what predicts. So this is showing right hemisphere coherence alpha, coherence beta 2, left hemisphere coherence alpha. So it's a very important distinction. And we look at the negative correlates during the auditory memory task. We've got coherence delta left hemisphere, phase alpha, and magnitude beta 1. So the problem with training the magnitudes in the SMR, which is predominantly beta 1, under task conditions, is you actually are making them worse at this point. So that's caution. Okay, let's get rid of these. Now, when you go to neuroeducation.co, I'll put that in the thing down here, you can download these 4 programs. One of them is a NeuroPsych Education EEG Sender. This is a software that translates between the AMP and the software. So we're going to put it in emulator mode. When we look at the biofeedback section, we're going to do a sample recording. But for this part, we'll do emulator mode. And then I load up the workstation. And we put in demo 1717, log in, next. Continue the trial, previous patient, and we're using Han Solo as the sample patient. And this is all the information you need to fill out on the initial screen. Part of what we're doing with this software is to make everything so very, very easy and make the decisions clinically relevant to how the empirical data correlates with performance. And here you have options of doing full reevaluations, partial reevaluations. So if you wanted to do visual attention, you could do an infinity number of visual attention tasks. The reevaluations for auditory memory, reading memory, and problem solving are limited to 9, which is much more than you probably ever need anyway. And you can also do a full reevaluation. So now we have the screen, and we need to bring up the console screen because that's where the content of the program will be shown. I have to do one more thing here to show you. Look at the screens over there. You really need 2 screens. The console screen constitutes the content screen, and you run the program off this notebook here. That way, you control what's going on. So now we start with a task, and these green arrows and the other indicators are a way to control the program.
You will need to print out the scoring sheets for the memory task now. Make sure your printer is on and you have 10 pieces of paper in the printer.
Now the scoring sheets are used at the end to score the subject's responses, which are recorded. So we're giving... I'm sorry, say it again. We're running the subject through 4 auditory memory tasks and 2 reading tasks. So this provides a scoring key, which is printed out for each evaluation or reevaluation. And the slashes indicate a point score. So if they remember Susan, they get a point. If it was a private detective, they get a point. And this is all explained in the manual. So now we start with the green arrow.
You will need to print out the scoring sheets for the memory task now.
Now I'm going to be skipping.
Make sure your printer is on and you have 10 pieces of paper in the printer. I will give you 60 seconds to make sure the printer is ready.
I'm going to be skipping through some of these because this whole evaluation takes about an hour. And what you're doing is a mini neuropsych evaluation. We're running through eyes closed, 2 attention tasks, a visual and an auditory, 4 auditory memory tasks, 2 reading memory tasks, 1 working memory task, and a problem-solving task, and then a delayed recall task on the auditory and the reading. So I can skip a task by clicking on the double blue arrows, and that moves me to the next.
I want you to adjust the volume control on the speakers so it is at a comfortable volume. This is a test of that volume. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My name is Dr. Kirtley Thornton of the Neuroscience Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to conduct a quantitative EEG evaluation on you today.
Now, what I'm trying to do here,
this slide shows a normal EEG.
To show the subject the artifact, the possibilities that they could have, and so to warm them up to the whole idea of what their brain is doing, and let them play with their brain at one point. So when I click on this
slide shows what happens when the eyes move from left to right or right to left. Note how the F7 and F8 waveforms separate during this artifact. This slide shows what happens when the eyes move up and down. Note the FP1 and FP2 locations going up and down. This slide shows what happens when muscle activity is evident. The muscle activity typically occurs in the locations above the ears, but can appear in any location. Now look again at a normal EEG. This is what we want your EEG to look like. I'm going to ask you to create the artifacts by moving your eyes left to right, right to left, up and down, and create food. I want you to understand how important it is to avoid these activities as much as possible. Next, we would like you to produce these artifacts. We are going to show you how your brain is acting right now. First, move your eyes up and down and watch what happens. Next, move your eyes from left to right and from right to left and watch the F7 and F8 locations. Next, create some muscle activity by...
Okay, now they're looking at their own recording and they're watching their brain, and they're supposed to be playing around with creating artifacts at this point. So they get a better feel for what they're part of the job here in terms of controlling the brain, the electrophysiology. I give them a minute here, and then we move on.
We are going to do 9 tasks today. We will start by having you close your eyes for 5 minutes. Then we will have you do an auditory attention task for about 3.5 minutes. Then a visual attention task for 3.5 minutes. Then listening and recalling 4 stories. Then reading and recalling 2 stories. Then repeating some numbers backwards. Then some problem-solving tasks. And lastly, 2 more memory tasks. All these tasks are very difficult. Please do not get discouraged if you do not think you're doing well. We are ready to start now. We are going to ask you to close your eyes now and keep them closed for 5 minutes. Focus your eyes on an imaginary spot.
This is the eyes closed data.
Close your eyes for 5 minutes. Close your eyes now.
And this is the eyes closed data we're trying to get now. I'm going to skip. I'm not going to have you look at this for 5 minutes. So
you can open your eyes now. I want you to keep your eyes closed during this next part. Whenever you hear the sound of the letter A coming from the computer, I want you to quickly tap the left side of the mouse and then quickly take your finger off the mouse. This part will go for 225 seconds. Now close your eyes.
G, E, A, D, H, A, H, A.
So the task here is to click the mouse when you hear the letter A. I pause the recording, and if I restart, it will restart with the double blues.
This time, whenever you see the letter A on the computer screen, I want you to quickly tap the left side of the mouse and then take your finger off the mouse. This task will go for 225 seconds. Keep your eyes open during this part.
This is a standard continuous performance test. And it goes for 225 seconds. We have some norms on it for adolescents, so we need to develop more norms for that. The norms we do have that are good are for auditory memory, reading memory, and problem solving. At the end, the software automatically scores these in terms of number correct, number wrong, and number missed, and that's presented at the end of the evaluation. So you don't have to do any of the scoring here. The software was designed to be as completely automated as possible. So, a technician could sit here and just click go, and the whole evaluation will run. And for the most part, they probably don't have to do anything, except if all of a sudden there's a large amount of artifact. They'll need to pause the recording and then restart. But once you get the subject trained correctly, that won't be a problem. This red button up here indicates that the EEG is being recorded. So it's not being recorded during all the times that we're giving instructions, when they're speaking out loud, remembering the story or telling us the story back. So it's one helpful way to keep an eye on what's going on.
We are done with that task now. You will now hear a story from the computer. It takes about 30 to 50 seconds to tell you. You need to keep your eyes closed. When the story is over, you will hear the word end. At that point, I will ask you to recall the story to yourself quietly. Keep your eyes closed during this time. Do not talk. Just quietly recall for 40 seconds. There will be 4 stories that you will hear. You will hear one story at a time. After each of the 4 stories, you will quietly recall it with your eyes closed. Close your eyes now. In a large office building in Midtown, New York, a young girl worked for an insurance company. A call came in during February of 1979 asking for help understanding the policy. The male voice on the other end of the phone was so appealing to Amy, the young girl, that she tried to get a date with him. He responded and gave her his name and phone number. His name was Jesus Smith. They arranged for a date in Central Park that evening. He had to drive 4 hours from Washington to make the date. When he arrived in the park, there was a big concert by Barbra Streisand going on. He couldn't find her anywhere. End. Okay, recall the story to yourself quietly with your eyes closed. You can begin now.
There's 4 of these. They're roughly in the 6th, 7th grade reading level. And as I keep talking now, it is being recorded so that later on at the end of the evaluation, you can play back this recording many times to get as accurate a score as you can from what goes on. Now I'm just going to skip to the end on this one. There's 4 of these stories.
Open your eyes and tell me everything you can remember about the story. Speak very clearly and do not mumble. We are recording what you are saying so that we can score it later. If we do not understand you, we will not be able to score it correctly. Okay, start telling me the story now.
So they start telling you now, and then it's hard to tell just how much information they have. So we put the option in here of when they're done, they can either click on this to indicate that they're done, or the technician can click on this, the double blue button arrow, to indicate that they're done, and then moving on to the next task.
Okay, close your eyes now for the next story. John Smith lived on an old dirty barge.
Okay.
And,
So
okay.
4 stories, and I'm just going to skip through it because you got the idea of the first one.
Open your eyes and tell me. Okay, close your eyes now for the next story. A green cap. End. Okay, recall the story to yourself quietly.
No, they're not going to remember all this information. All these stories are really designed to be impossible for anybody to 100% remember. And that's to avoid a ceiling effect, which can occur very easily.
Open your eyes and tell me everything. Okay, close your eyes now for the next story. It was a hot summer. End. Open your eyes.
Okay, now we switch to the reading. There's 2 of these reading tasks.
Next we're going to do some reading. There will be reading material on the screen, which we want you to read quietly to yourself. We will give you 100 seconds to read. Then the text will go away. You can then close your eyes and quietly recall all that you can remember for 50 seconds. We will then ask you to open your eyes and tell us the story back. We will be doing 2 reading tasks, one at a time.
Now, there's a lot of information here and this is for the adults. For the kids, get much simpler stories. They're all by grade level. So you have 100 seconds to read this material, and then you get the quiet recall period of about 60 seconds. And Surprisingly, some people can remember quite a bit, but that's part of the idea here. So anyway, 100 seconds is up.
Okay, recall the story to yourself quietly with your eyes closed. You can begin now.
Now they're recalling, and then you ask them to do it out loud.
Open your eyes and tell me everything you can remember about the story. Speak very clearly and do not mumble. We are recording what you are saying so that we can score it later. If we do not understand you, we will not be able to score it correctly. Okay, start telling me the story now.
Like before, they're talking out loud. They're going to keep going until they run out of information, and then you click and move on to the next task. There's 2 reading tasks.
Okay, now.
We're just going to move through them since you got the idea.
Okay, recall this. Open your eyes and tell me everything. Next, you will hear a series of numbers. The first set of numbers will involve 2 numbers.
This is a working memory
4,
task.
7. Each number will take 1 second to present. You will repeat the numbers backwards, such as 7, 4, by clicking on the numbers with the mouse. After you do 2 problems successfully, you will be presented with a set of 3 numbers, which will take 3 seconds to present. You are to repeat the 3 numbers backwards by clicking the mouse on the numbers. Once you have completed 2 of the problems successfully, you will be presented with 4 numbers, then 5 numbers, etc. This procedure will continue for 3 minutes. Do not respond until the numbers go away. You must enter the same number of digits as was presented, or you will not move on. So if 4 digits are appearing, you must enter 4 digits. If you enter only 2 digits, the program will not move forward. Okay, we're going to start now.
6, 3, 8, 9, 7, 2, 4, 7, 4, 7, 5, 3, 5, 0.
So this comes actually from the Wechsler IQ test. It's the digits forward and digits backward. I'm just presenting in terms of a screen display, but the auditory input is the same for the IQ measure. So it's a test of working memory, which is a very important neuropsychological concept. And it goes for 3 minutes, which we're not going to do. But it keeps building up until you get 6 digits or 7 digits. And then we get a score, and we can see here this score is 4. I indicated I got 4 right so far, but it'll also give a score for the number of times, the number of digits you were able to successfully recall backwards. So if you max out at 3 digits, that'll be 1 score, even though you may have gotten 10 right. So 2 different types of scores.
Next, we will be presenting some problems on the screen. First, we will provide you with a warm-up example. Look at the figures in front of you. There is a horizontal and vertical pattern going on in the figure. There is an empty spot in the bottom right of the figure. One of the 8 figures below will make sense if it is placed in that position. Tell me what figure should go there by clicking the mouse on the figure to indicate your answer. We will indicate to you whether you are correct or wrong by using a high and low tone. First, we will let you hear the high tone, which indicates you are correct. Next, you will be hearing a low sound, which means you are incorrect. Now, let's look at this problem. We have 3 shapes in the figure above. There's a circle, a rectangle, and the letter T. Each row has one of these figures. Each column has one of these figures. Therefore, the correct figure to place in the bottom right would be number 6, the letter T. Placing the letter T in the bottom right empty space would keep the row consistent with the horizontal row pattern in the figure and consistent with the vertical column pattern in the figure. As each row and each column will have one of each of the three shapes. Choosing number 5 would be incorrect, even though it is the letter T, because it is not the same size as the figures above. Okay, we are going to proceed to the problems now. Remember, you are allowed up to 4 guesses, and the tone will indicate whether you are correct or wrong. Okay, let's get started.
So this is the Ravens matrices. And I'm showing you when I click wrong, and you get up to 4. If you get it right on the first guess, you get 4 points. If you get it right on the second guess, you get 3 points, etc. This goes for 10 minutes. And there's 3 levels: kids ages 5 to 10, ages 10 to 14, and then 14 plus. And you can do up to 9 reevaluations on this. And you can see it's generating a score over here. So then at the end, you get a copy of that score. And at the very end, these are the more difficult ones. So each of these tasks become increasingly a little more difficult as you move through.
Next, I would like you to close your eyes and try and recall all the 4 stories that were read to you before. I will allow you 60 seconds to recall, and then I will ask you to open your eyes and tell me what you recall during the quiet recall period. Only tell me what you recall during the quiet period. If something else comes to your mind, do not include it in the recall. Okay, start recalling now.
Okay, they're recalling to themselves, and then they tell you out loud.
Open your eyes and tell me everything you could remember about the 4 stories. Speak very clearly and do not mumble. We are recording what you are saying so that we can score it later. If we do not understand you, we will not be able to score it correctly. Okay, start telling me the story now.
All right, so they tell you the story, and then they run out, and then we do the reading.
Close your eyes and try and recall.
Same idea, they're recalling the reading.
Open your eyes and tell me everything you could. Okay, we are finished for today. I would like to thank you for participating in this evaluation today. Thank you. The test administrator can now take the cap off of your head. The administrator will need to stay after you leave to score the recordings.
All right, now you have the scoring screen. All right, I was talking during the first auditory memory one. Click on that.
Okay, they start telling you now, and then it's hard to tell just how much information they have.
And then you can
the
put
option in here.
score in there.
When they're done, they can either click on this to indicate.
And then you get scores for these other tasks. And that's all the information saved. And then it gets uploaded. Save it. And then you upload it to the business software. You will need to print out the scoring sheets for the memory tasks now. Make sure. Okay, now I'll show you. So the day goes up, and now we get a report about your discussion about the variables, the model that we're using. These are the type of variables that we're looking at. And we correlate these variables, these flashlight variables and processing unit variables, with the performance. This allows us to see how many artifact free epochs there were in each task, which is very useful because if you only got 3 seconds in one task, you're going to really not hold much weight to it. And then we have, this indicates how we calculate the beta weight, which is how we determine what's the most important to go after. We take a look at the subject standard deviation value and that value of the correlation for that variable, multiply it to get a beta weight, and whatever the lowest beta weight is, that's what we go for in terms of the reward, the positive, and in terms of the inhibit. This shows you all the variables. It's like all the variables that are involved in auditory memory for adults. So CPU coherence alpha, that's the central processing unit coherence alpha, and this is the subject z-score. So this indicates that we should be going after peak frequency beta 1 because that's the most deviant. And this shows you the negative correlations. But the software, looks at all these variables, and we get head figures for the variables as well as the subject's standard deviation value on it. And you can look through here, you can start to understand how this particular brain is working or not working. So this becomes very useful, but the software really will make the recommendations when we get to that. The other thing it does, so it goes through these 3 tasks: auditory memory, reading memory, and problem solving, looking at the positive correlates, the negative correlates, and then sets up the rewards situation. But the other thing it's doing, which is very good, it takes a look at the average response in terms of standard deviation of all the tasks, all the active tasks, not the eyes closed. So this is showing you the magnitude values across all these tasks. What is the average standard deviation value? And you can see T3 low on beta 1 and beta 2. So this becomes very useful. And here are your relative power values. You can see that it really has a problem with relative power beta 1 and beta 2. And peak frequency is also a problem. And the color coding really helps you see right away. If it's white, that means it's doing a half a standard deviation of the norm. Light blue, you're between minus 0.5 and minus 1.5. Dark blue, you're less than minus 1.5. And similarly for orange, you're going up and with those type of numbers. So between plus 0.5 and plus 1.5. And we get really above, I don't see one really above yet. Anyway, and then we use these triangle sheets. So if you look at alpha, this is showing you the average standard deviation. This is probably auditory memory. No, I'm sorry, across all tasks. And it's showing you the average frontal processing unit standard deviation for coherence alpha. So you're looking at all these numbers and takes an average of that and shows you that they're a little bit weak on that, but then goes through all the other processing units for alpha and then for beta, so you can see there's no problem here. And this looks pretty good as well. And then we go into phase. So you could use this to design an intervention program which is really specific for that particular subject and where his strengths and weaknesses are. So let's go back to this one. All right, so now we will go to the biofeedback one. And here we stop the emulator and set up a sample recording that we have. Then we load this KISS software. KISS stands for Keep It Simple Stupid, because we're really trying to make this software as idiot-proof as possible. But we had to spend a lot of attention on the extra variables and the sound issues, because even though we're making recommendations, you may want to change those recommendations. So you need to be able to set up your own variable. So this shows you how this particular variable is, and this is looking at peak frequency alpha, but you can pretty much design any variable you want. So you just got to get used to how to work these screens. and then enter that variable into the subject's data file. So let's load up a patient. This is our sample patient. Then we load up his history. And these are all the variables as they relate positively to auditory memory and reading memory, negative to auditory memory. Starts the session, and you can change these. So it's showing you the standard deviation value, where the relative power beta 1 is for that subject, and showing the standard deviation screens. This is a glockenspiel, it's called. So that goes up and down as the subject's value goes up and down. The negative one, we did not design it to go up and down or in loudness or frequency, because it gets very confusing. You can change that. The sound options are quite extensive. So you can really change any of this, but I wouldn't try and do it during a session. Doing it outside of the session before the subject comes in is probably preferable, because you need to see how it sounds, and you can use a sample recording to test out the sound, because you want to see how it actually works. Now this will go for 3 minutes before we get a sample graph. So you can cancel at this point, but if I go for all 3 minutes, it will give you a sample graph at the end. I'm not going to do that, so we'll just cancel. So to give you a little bit more idea, these are the sound settings. There's 2 types. There's the static mapper and the auto threshold. One operates on the standard deviation idea. The other one operates on, let's see where the guy is. Let's test him for a little bit, find out his range, and then try and pull him up from the range he's in. Both have strengths and weaknesses. This allows you to set the standard deviation cutoffs, because you may not want to increase the magnitude of beta 2, for example, 32 to 64, above the normative value, because you might start creating anxiety conditions. So in here you can say, okay, the cutoff of the sound will stop will be when he's 1 standard deviation above, or half, or whatever it is you want. So then at that point he will not get any more rewards, so he will not increase the value of the variable anymore. And all this stuff is explained in the manual, but it's quite detailed. You can still see, save them. And this goes through the inhibit, similar idea, where you can control what's going on. You can change, I put tuba in for the inhibit sound. And some other controls in here for the reward and inhibit in terms of the smoothing factors. And this gets a little technical and complicated, so I'm not going to try and explain it all in here, because there's a lot of different aspects of this control that's explained in the manual. And you can select start a new patient or existing patient, etc. So it gives you a lot of control, because the idea is that you want to have the subject engage in this task while they're either reading or listening to the story. I don't have them play any video games, because that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because one, video games don't really generalize to other tasks. So if the kid has a reading problem, you really want to work just on reading, and then move on to auditory memory or problem solving. Having him do his homework is a good idea when you're working on problem solving. And you have ultimate control of the variables. We make recommendations, but you can change the variables if you think it'd be better to do something else, which is fine. and you have a lot of control of the sound. You don't have much control in terms of the evaluation other than just running the evaluation and getting the data and getting the report. But a lot of control in the biofeedback part. Any thoughts or questions? That's an overview. One of the things I do, by the way, I use let me show you what's called the saline cap. It's called FreeCap because it avoids the problem of having to take the needle. The guy called Thomas Feiner in Germany came up with this. So you soak the cap in salt water. He's doing a little bit different than I do. I soak the whole cap. Then you have to dry it because you don't want water on those rubber tubings. Otherwise, you get a salt jump. So, but it works pretty good, and you don't have to rub the subject's head with that needle. So if anybody wants to see where that goes to, that's the name of the group. It's within Facebook. It's called FreeCap.
Yeah, Dr. Thornton.
Yes.
Yeah, do you only, I noticed that the two QEEG acquiring tools were MITSAR and Discovery. Are there any other QEEG acquisition tools that can be used with your software?
Yeah, we had the drivers done for MITSAR and for BrainMaster. And we can do the other ones. We just need to get a unit to work with and some help probably from the hardware people because these people make the specs a little bit different.
Gotcha.
So we're open to doing that and would like to do it. We'd like to do Dobris's cap.
Yeah, I've got the Q20.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I have Nick Dover's Q20.
Okay. So that's a 19-channel job.
Yes. Does it need to be more than 19 channels?
We need to write the drivers for it. I don't know if there's specs that he can give us that we'll need to do. And I don't know whether we can do it on TeamViewer. Our programmers in the US, it might be able to be done, but sometimes we've had to mail the actual unit to him so he can work on the specs and get them right.
Okay.
So that's always an issue. But those are the three main ones, and I'm sure there'll be some of those down the road that will work on the drivers. It's really, how cooperative are the hardware people. We can get it done. We just have to have cooperation in a little time. Because the programmers we have are actually really good. The guy, one of the main programs is, he used to work on the radar system in Turkey. But he got interested in this stuff, so to our advantage. And we will also be averaging SW Loretta, not averaging, be inputting the SW Loretta software. We're working on that now, as well as increasing the database size. That's the other big thing to do.
So essentially, the subject is doing the neurofeedback with the full cap, and you're taking that data all the time. Is that correct?
Not during the instructions. And not during the spontaneous verbal recall, but whenever that little red light goes on, yeah, we're recording the data.
Okay. So essentially, it's a full cap training all the time.
Correct. But if there's a way around that, if you know you're going to do just frontal lobes, you can probably get away with just poking up the frontal lobes and then choose frontal lobes. But then the problem is if you're going to choose an inhibit variable, then, what you can do inhibit in the frontal, which you could do, I suppose. You could reward beta and inhibit theta in the front.
But are you targeted audience then really people who have learning disabilities and reading problems, memory problems?
And head injuries.
And head injuries. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I have the FreeCap, the 4-channel FreeCap. I haven't started using it yet, but I purchased it. But I have intended to getting the full cap.
Yeah, they're
So-
about 800, 900. There's a real
Yeah.
advantage with the ear clips. Electro caps, sort of tin ear clips, they wear out after a while.
Yeah.
They're about $20 a pair, I think. But
Yeah, but Finder uses, as far as I know, Finder uses a sensor on mastoid. He doesn't use ear clips.
yeah, I didn't like that, so I moved it to ear clips.
I got you. Okay.
But it's got the sponge, so you can just replace the sponge, and that I had mine, and I hadn't had any problem with it. But
I
the
gotcha.
beats always come out really good with the ear clips.
So you bought the ear clips from him?
Yeah,
Okay.
and he's got a new chin strap, which is actually helpful.
Okay.
Yes, make sure you ask for that. And you should ask for extra sponges, by the way. They don't really cost them much, but you need them in case something goes wrong. And
Yeah, I
then
have that too.
you got to putz around with that cap, by the way, in order to it's a fiddle with it in order to make sure it gets on the right spots and the impedance is okay. Sometimes you're up and running in 5 minutes without a problem. Other times you got.
Do you have training in your facility in North Carolina?
No, I was just going to do it by these webinars predominantly.
I got you. Okay.
That becomes more expensive. Then you got a hotel room and all that other stuff.
Well, that's true. And what does your software cost?
We're selling it, the two modules, the eval and bio. Kit software is for $4,000,
Okay.
and then we're charging $100 per evaluation because you're really doing a mini neuropsych. So you're justified to charge more, and we're giving 3 times or 4 times the amount of information that you would get from Thatcher or somebody else.
Gotcha.
And then we're charging $10 per session under the idea
Gotcha.
that you're really getting supervision, and that's what the $10 is by that beta weight decision. Because every time the session occurs, we update the data file to decide what is the next best thing that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
So that recalculates and says, okay, now the priority is this. Okay, now it's changed. Now the priority is this, which I think is really, really useful because, you don't have to sit there for 10 minutes trying to figure out what to do. You can override it, but, it makes good recommendations. So it's just how long it takes to get that cap on the head, and then you're up and running.
What do you figure a session runs in terms of time?
About 30 minutes.
Okay. So in a sense, in this feedback system, that really this is more auditory and visual rather than any kind of feedback screen like they have on many of the other systems.
It's auditory recall because I play Harry Potter audio tapes or whatever, and reading Harry Potter again with the kids if they like Harry Potter, and then homework for problem solving or math or whatever else they may have a problem with. There's I have data on other things like multiplication tables, 2-digit addition. The problem is that you can't keep these caps on the head for very long. So the eval takes an hour. And I just thought, I don't want to add any more to it because that's pretty rough on some of these kids.
Sure.
And you're putting the brain under a lot of tasks, very difficult tasks. And it's very interesting sometimes. Some kids will respond to the problem solving. They'll wake up. But, when they're listening to Harry Potter, their brain's asleep. So mom will say, yeah, he doesn't listen to me.
Okay.
So you can really see differences in terms of how the specific brain is responding to these different conditions.
I don't have any other questions at this time, but thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? You can also, by the way, go up on I'm sorry, what? A previous webinar is up on the website, Neuroeducation CO, as well as those 4 programs and a batch of other information, resumes, books, whatever. And that links to the business software. We have to work on the the similarity between the business software and the neuroeducation CL software. They're sort of different formats, but that's one of the other chores that we got to get done at some point. Yeah, the one, my idea behind all this was to really get a good feel for what the brain does under the cognitive activation, because that's really what the kids and adults are doing. They're walking around in the world, and they got demands on them. So, what is it that makes the brain work? And it's also for normal people. There's no reason why this can't be used with normal. The data I have involves normal people in that initial screen, so they got considerably better as well. Each of the groups in that initial screen, by the way, they were performing better than the reference group, the normative reference group, on the different tasks, which was auditory and reading memory. So you could say that, especially the specific learning disabilities, you could say they're quote cured, at least of the memory part, because I couldn't test them or didn't test them on a lot of other things to avoid the issue of cost to the patient and the parent. For head injury, one of the big things was, I didn't put it up yet, but what happens is the coherence and phase of the gamma frequency, 32 to 64, gets really severely affected. And I was able to do this one paper where I got 100% accuracy in terms of discriminating between the normal individual and the head injury. And then I came down to North Carolina, and I had 3 subjects that the discriminant did not work with. So I figure I'm at 99%. But that, if you're dealing with head injury, that higher frequency is really the critical variables. That, as well as a lot of relative power beta 2, the gamma, in the frontal lobes, which overlaps with the fMRI research very well. And the worse that variable is, the longer it takes for them to recover. So for the head injury group, this approach is critical because we are looking at that gamma frequency.
Is some of that material on the gamma frequency also on your website?
No, but if you email me, I can email you the article.
Okay.
And the website has my email link down below.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? We really like to get somebody in the educational arena involved so we can get somebody to do some research on this approach. I've done my part, but it really needs to be replicated and needs to get into a school system or educational system. So if anybody knows anybody, that would be great. We have some interest in Turkey in terms of it, but we'll have to see where that's going to go there. They are sort of getting some preliminary data and doing the research stuff with elementary school kids. But that's more evaluation data, not treatment data at this point.
I've always found the education group to be very closed. Basically, they want to develop things from within rather than from without. But that's not, I'm sure, in all cases, but that's been my experience in the past.
Yeah, they're also low on money. That's the other problem. And there's a lot of...
So are we, Dr. Thorne.
Yes, I know. The other angle we're working on is the prison system. We're trying to get into the Philadelphia prison system, and we've been working on that one for a while.
Maybe you ought to tackle the opioid situation. I mean, there seems to be a lot of good money coming for that, or in terms of grants, I assume. I personally am not going to do that, but there's that. Plus, there's all that mental health that has to do with these people who are doing terrible damage violently. But those are 2 good populations that seem like there's a lot of money coming down the pike for.
Yeah, I tried the research grant approach before. My problem is, I'm this one clinician now in the woods here, and they want somebody from a university. And until you get that, I'm not sure there's much I can do other than, just marketing locally or whatever.
Gotcha.
In terms of getting grant money, that's in their head.
Well, neuromodulation is not or biofeedback is not in their heads in general for grant money. But in any case, but thank you so much. I'll be looking at your website in the future. Thank you, Dr. Thornton.
Okay. Thanks for visiting. Anybody else want to say anything, or should we sign out? Okay. Why don't we end the meeting if everybody else has any objection? Thank you for coming.